There is no one else that can control our brain except us.
Where to start with today's guest? Now, if you follow footy, the name speaks for itself. Andrew is one of the most respected high-performance figures in the AFL's history. But what sets Andrew apart isn't just his technical brilliance or his track record of results. It's his philosophy, his ability to connect the dots between the mind, body and purpose.
There is no human that is born with this amazingly special talent to execute without doing a lot of work. You think a certain way, that releases certain chemicals in your brain, and those chemicals are either chemicals that are helping you or hindering you. So let's just say I had 3 hours sleep last night. Let's just say I had a fight with my wife this morning before I got here. Resilient people have the ability to compartmentalize and push away all that stuff and have the ability to focus right here and now on what matters, and then the ability to come back to that.
Since joining Elite Humans back in January of 2025, my mindset, my physical health and my running have gone to an entirely different level. But more importantly, I've reconnected with the version of myself that demands more.
High performers understand that they can control their mind, they can control their environment, have the ability to change parts of our brain, switch on certain parts, switch off other parts. And that is all in our power. Great to be here. Awesome. Thanks for having me, Michael.
Now, it's good to finally get you on board. So, obviously, I've done a bit of an introduction there. Let's get straight into the first question, and it's a pretty straightforward one. What is high performance?
Look, high performance is what I've spent my life learning about, investigating, researching. I started many years ago, studying at university, and then, working with athletes. I started working with athletes. I'm thinking there's way more than just training the body here. The mind is where the power is. So I've got to try and unlock this piece of the puzzle if I'm going to be able to influence. So my journey started with athletes, but as I've gone along, I've transitioned to now saying, well, how can I use these principles to help everyone, anyone that wants to live the best or be the best version of themselves. And so, for me, what greater purpose than to help others do special things, And if you think about any athlete, any business person or any person in the world that's doing great things, they are essentially ordinary people that have created their world to do extraordinary things. Every human. There is no human that is born with this amazingly special talent to execute these things that they want to execute without doing a lot of work. A lot of work on themselves. Now, some people it's a bit more natural and that comes to them a bit easier, and other people have said, you know what, I've got to go and find out what it is for me to make, me be able to influence others and do great things. So high performance, it's really about controlling your body, your mind, your spirit, your ability to influence others, having real clarity about what you want to be, how you want to be seen, what you want to do, building knowledge. You have to build knowledge, to be great, to be a great athlete, you have to know what attributes you're going after. All right, be really clear on what attributes you're going after. If you want to be great in business, it's just like, well, what are the attributes I have to be really good at here to thrive in this environment? The ad hoc approach of I'll just see how this goes is fraught with danger.
Yeah.
And and I think there's always examples of people that have got there and done amazing things that would say, you know what, I had no structure and I had no systems and it just happened for me. I would argue that there was structure and systems and things in place, but they just didn't realise, it wasn't conscious to them that they did that. But I would argue that they did. But majority of people in the majority of situations need to have a plan. You got to have a plan. You got to know what you're going after, and then you've got to be very good at understanding yourself. So, we talk about self-observation. One of the first things I ever do with anyone that I want to, talk about is just going, well, do you actually know what you are right now to start with? So are you can you observe yourself? Are you good at observing yourself? Do you know what you're looking for? And then do you know what you're going to do with it once you find it? Because if you want to, I mean, high performance is about ultimately saying, well, what behaviors am I doing really well? What am I good at? And what behaviors do I need to change? And when you look at the science of behavior change, most people don't actually know what they are to start with. So, there's an evolving area of neuroscience, which I'm absolutely fascinated about, and I'm, I'm studying in that space right now. Just well into a Masters of Neuroscience, because I want to further develop my skills of being how to influence people, and untapping what's going on in your brain, and then how that affects your body is the key. So we're going to hear a lot more around neuroscience in the coming years, and it's an evolving thing now. In social media now, there's a lot more, people looking at neuroscience, and neuroscientists are starting to come out and say this is the way, the brain works. But, essentially we have the power to strengthen or weaken circuitry in our brains.
Yep.
And ultimately, high performers understand that they can control their mind, they can control their environment, all right? Because we all need to understand what our environment is to be able to change it and influence it. And they understand the enormous power that you have to change your brain. Our brain is, it's called a neuroplasticity. We have the ability to change parts of our brain, switch on certain parts, switch off other parts. And that is all in our power. There is no one else that can control our brain except us. But we allow everyone, or we allow our environment, or we allow things in our brain to hijack us. So we have two brains. We have the conscious brain and the subconscious brain. The conscious brain is all about what we're thinking, right now, and what we're spending our time and energy on. The subconscious brain is we do things without ever thinking, all right? So 80% of our day is driven by our subconscious brain. We are doing it because we did it yesterday, we did it the day before, we did it 5 years ago, we did it 10 years ago, and we continue to do it. So simple things like the way you brush your teeth. So if you measured the time it takes to brush your teeth, you would probably be within 5 seconds every single time. So if you brush your teeth for 30 seconds, you're going to brush your teeth between 25 and 35 seconds every single time. If you're doing it for 2 minutes, you're probably doing it for between 1:50, for 1:55 and 2:05. That's the variation. We have patterns of behavior that we just keep returning to without thinking. So if we grow up with really good patterns through environment, through what we've been taught by our parents, through experience, then those patterns of behavior hold us in really good stead in life.
Yep.
So really good patterns, especially during our teenage years. They're very, very powerful, those patterns that get laid down in our nervous system, in our brain, during those times of our life. So if we end up having struggles in our life or difficulty later on, it's easy to tap back in because our brains have been wired a certain way in our teenage years. The challenge is we had difficulty back then. We had a lot of negative experiences back then. It's also easy and quick to go back to those negative experiences. Mm-hmm. But the beauty of life is that you can change your brain circuitry and then you can change outcomes, based on the way that you think, which is fascinating. Everyone talks about the power of positivity and positive thinking without knowing how powerful it is. We just sort of throw it out there, and then think about, the flow and effect of how you live your life and how you are and living by these high performance principles, and then how that affects everyone else. And sport is a great way to represent that, because let's just take the example of my world that I've come from, a football team. That football team has the same players from the start of the year to the end of the year, or from one season to the next season, yet the outcomes are very, very different. All right? There's nothing guaranteed in life. There's nothing guaranteed in sport. That's why we love it.
Absolutely.
You know, so what changes?
So this is what I find fascinating. I think one of the big pieces of engaging with you was to get some accountability in my life, because fortunately and unfortunately, I'm accountable for myself. I don't have a boss or someone that I'm referring to, or someone in my corner. There's advisors and people that are helping me in certain areas. But what I noticed with you is removing yourself from a situation and really going to the balcony and looking down on your life and where individuals need to improve. So how does someone, a couple of questions here, what are the key attributes and areas from a macro level that would help somebody become elite? And then how do we go about tapping into those?
Yeah, good questions. Good questions. I've mentioned it already, but the first thing is about that self-discovery, is asking questions of yourself or having someone else ask questions of where are you right now? What's working really well in your life? What are you struggling with? Even if you started with something really, really simple.
Yep.
Then the next concept is this, energy concept, asking the question around what is your sleep like right now? What are your exercise habits right now? What are your nutrition habits right now? How you deal with stress? What is your underlying mindset? And let's come back to some of these and build on them. How at a hormonal level, there's ways of identifying, what's going well in your body and what's not going well in your body. And the fact that the way we think affects our hormones, which then affects the chemicals that get released in our brain, which then affects how we feel. So everything is interrelated here, and everything is a cycle. You think a certain way, that releases certain chemicals in your brain, and those chemicals are either chemicals that are helping you or hindering you. You can only have one thought at a time. You can't multitask. You can't have 3 thoughts going in your brain at once. There is one channel. So you got to choose the channel, and you have the ability to change that channel at any moment you want to change the channel. But you got to know what channel you're on, and you've got to know then how to change. Now, and a lot of this stuff is quite simple, but it can have dramatic influences on your life. And then there's the element of leadership, as in self-leadership. How am I leading myself? Because if you want to be able to influence others, and we're all influencing others, whether we like it or not, we are. We have to learn the principles of self-leadership, and then principles of leading others and influencing others. And then finally we get to purpose, as in why the hell am I doing this, what I do? I get up every day. Why am I doing it? And that's something that through my career challenged me around my purpose. What was it? And sometimes in life, where you come from has a big influence on that. My dad was a medical practitioner. He was a doctor. He was a very good doctor in a country town. He became a sports medicine sort of specialist because that's what he loved, and actually just learned through his kids because they were all training hard, getting injured. So he sort of worked it out in the days before speciality, And so I think for a long time I compared myself to my dad. I'm thinking all I'm doing is getting people fit. It's just like, what is that? Is that, there's no power in that. And I actually thought it was I'm really not doing much here in life. And then I flicked it around completely 180 and said, you know what? I'm trying to help ordinary people, young men, do extraordinary things. So in the context of helping young men change their lives, they've got a dream. Focusing on the athlete, which is what really matters, is the athlete, because we all get caught up in politics and other shit going on in our life. But you've got to be really careful that you know what your focus is. So in business, you've got to know, what is my focus? So because you're going to have lots of things that are going to cloud that and come in and take you away from what you're really, really good at. Because you need to have athletes need to have a one wood, and then they need to build off that. But their one wood's got to be good.
You focus on
in
that
business
a bit,
and
don't
life.
you? Which is focus on your strengths. if you're a B plus, become an A, or if you're a D in something, don't focus too much. Focus on the attributes where you're strong at. Is that?
Well, I think a lot of people in life think, I'm pretty good at that. And if I just bring the things up that I'm not very good at, then I'm going to be a better overall product at whatever it is.
Yeah.
And there is some truth to that. But what people get drawn to in life and what makes people great is that their one wood stands out. Mm-hmm. So if people talk about you in life and they at a party and they talk about you and they don't say Michael's a great generalist, isn't he? He's he's good at this and he's good at that and he's not bad at that. And you know what? They say, you know what? Whatever comes into their mind, because this is in their subconscious, they're not thinking about what they like about you or what you're good at. Something just pops in because that's the thing that stands out to them. Mm-hmm. And whatever stands out to us, we have an emotional connection to, which then triggers that part of that brain that then sends a message to say, well, that's what I think about Michael. That's what he is. So they say, Michael is an unbelievable motivator. Does he know anything about real estate? Oh, yeah. He knows a bit about real estate too. But he's just a bloody good motivator. So what you think you're good at might not be what everyone else thinks you're good at either. Yeah. So, I mean, we can go so many different ways here.
Yeah.
But in that piece, I think it's really important to know what other people think of you within your organisation. So if you're a business leader, the you that you know is different to the you that we know as people that are working with you. And I learnt, I did some work on this a few years ago, and I had a bit of work to do on myself about this, because people are saying, you were this and now you're this. And I'm thinking, no, I'm still that. So my mind's still there, and they're going, no, you're not quite that anymore. You're actually this. You're this new version. So it took me a bit to say, all right, well, that's the slightly new version.
Was it a better version or?
It's just a different version. Just a different version. So I'm not sure where we started there, but that I think that bit around the leader with going back to strengths is you want your strengths to shine. Yeah. And you want everyone else to know what your strengths are. They should be obvious to people.
You go through that in the discovery. I think you're pretty savvy at picking up what someone's strengths are right away, and also where they need to improve. I think what was interesting was when I met you. I mean, I came to you purely. I wanted to get better at running. That was a big part. So I sort of had a goal.
Yeah.
Then I very quickly realised this has got nothing to do with running. This has got a lot to do with mindset, with finding clarity, with understanding purpose. Having a really, preparation was a huge thing that I'm still learning, which you've taught me, and then executing when you're fatigued. And that's what I love. I mean, what I've enjoyed the most is the testing of the mental toughness. Can we talk about the mental toughness? Because that part gets me excited.
Well, the number one attribute for any successful person is resilience.
Yeah. Mental
toughness, however you want to say it, it's the same thing. Because what we do know is that in life and in sport and whatever, you're going to have hard times, you're going to have struggles, and you're going to have to go through difficulty, and you're going to have to work it out. And the people who can work it out and work it out quicker are the ones that thrive. We've talked a little bit about being clear of what you want to be and what you want to go after and how you want to be seen. Consistency. So consistency of just turning up. So on the days that you don't feel good, or the days that the weekend didn't go well, or you had a big weekend or whatever, you just need to turn up. Physically you need to turn up, but emotionally you need to turn up, and you need to be there, and you need to work. You need to work really hard, and this is the planning element of turning up and being in a good place. So sometimes that means that you need to spend half an hour in the morning before work, or half an hour the night before, to say, I'm not where I want to be. Let's get in the best place I can be by the time I turn up at 9 o'clock in the morning. Because no one's expecting you to be at your best, but they certainly view you harshly at your worst. because we're all making judgments of each other all the time. And a lot of the judgments we're making are subconscious judgments. So we're saying he is this, she is that, without even knowing, but it's all going in, those judgments. The ability to want, knowledge seeking. The high performers are just always searching for knowledge. And in sporting sense, worked with a lot of great players, and Patrick Cripps is one of those. He is just so damn curious, and not just about playing football. I talk in life, curiosity about life. He's just applying it to the football field, but so curious about, what it is he can do better. And I've got a great story to highlight that, which I think anyone can transfer to their life. Just use that principle, come back to that story of curiosity about how to get better. So remind me about that.
Yep.
They know when to be urgent and when not to be urgent.
I love your urgency stories.
So, there is a time when it matters to get shit done quickly. And the biggest thing I learned off working with Alistair Clark as a coach, and I worked with him for 14 years, was there is a time when you just need to get stuff done, and it matters to do it now, not tomorrow, not the next day, not the day after. And that sense of urgency just spreads through the organisation that things matter. But there's also a time not to act, especially when you're in a high emotional state, when you're not at your best. There is a time when you actually need to consolidate, just absorb information, sit back, and, so that's the art of it all, isn't it? Knowing when to be urgent and knowing when to sit back and say, no, now's not the time. And also the other thing about urgency is who is the best person to deal with the situation? So good leaders know, and high performers know, that I'm actually not the one in this situation that's going to get the best outcome. I'm not the one that can influence this situation the most, so I'm going to influence someone else to go and get that job done that we need to get done. Whereas other times it's like, you know what, this is my time. I'm owning this one. I'm driving it. It's on me, and I'm taking responsibility for it. So again, that's the art of it. Very good at observing themselves and knowing what they are and listening. High performers are good listeners. And you can still be a high performer without listening, but if you want to be a high performer over the long, if you want to play the long game and be really good over a long period of time, you have to be good at listening. I would say, so I worked for 25 years in my role as a high performance director, where you've got 70 people a day who all think they're the most important people in the world. You've got 45 players who think they're the most important person in the world, just like your staff. They all think they're the most important person in the world. And then you've got all the staff around those players, and then you've got board directors, and then you've got supporters outside of that. So, but let's just take a daily. You could have 70 people. So I would say 80% of my days were spent listening and observing, and then very, very quickly having to decipher information and then working out a solution to that, and then working out who needs to be part of that discussion. Is it a one-on-one? Is it 4 people? Is it 10 people? Is it a session with the group? Am I getting all staff in? Am I doing a 1v1? What's my strategy? But you've got to have a strategy. They have high levels of drive and passion. So that's when we talk about your strengths. Well, if you're not bringing your strengths to the table, you're not going to show that passion and that drive. And if there's one thing, we talk about energy, and there's energy coming from me to you right now, and we have energy from our heart that is connecting. We either like each other or we don't, and that's happening like that. As soon as we meet each other, we make a decision whether we like this person or we don't like this person. Doesn't mean that that's the way it stays, but that's the way it starts. There is energy going between. We'll talk a little bit about the role of mirror neurons and storytelling as well. They love the struggle. So high performers love the struggle, and they're really comfortable in that space, knowing that there are times it is going to be a shit fight, and there's going to be stuff that needs to get done, and there's going to be people that are unhappy. You cannot please everyone. There's so many different views in this world. but you have to have strong reasoning. You have to have, really good principles, and you need to be consistent with people. Otherwise, that's when people lose trust in you. And then we can go down, you talk about, building trust and how to build trust, and, that's another rabbit warren down there, but so important. And they're very good at storytelling. Leaders are brilliant at storytelling.
Why is that so important?
Well, I think in many ways you could say storytelling is like an emotional glue between you and me, or me and the audience. And so I talked a little bit about mirror neurons before, and mirror neurons are in our brains, and I tell you a story and you get drawn into that story because there are parts of our brain that get drawn into that and activate the same part of your brain that's being activated in my brain at that time when I tell that story. And so the greatest example of that is you watch a movie, highly emotional, someone's crying, you start crying. And even if you don't start crying, majority of people will feel emotion and that they make a decision, I don't look like a dick here, so I'm not going to cry. Whereas other people say, I'm really happy to cry, I don't care, I'm happy to show that emotion. But there's only a very small percentage of people in that situation where you're watching a highly emotional movie that won't feel that emotion, all right? And we won't go who that type of person is, but it's rare, all right? It's rare. So we get drawn into the story, and then we start imagining what that means for us. So we think, well, how does that relate to me and my life? And so we start the process of using imagery, and high performers use imagery all the time because there's only so many conversations you can have. There's only so many repetitions you can do. If you want to become great at anything, if you want to build a habit or become great at anything, you need to do it a damn lot. And there's a science, that theory comes out, you need to do 10,000 hours to be an expert at anything. Whether that is right or wrong is a bit irrelevant. But what you do have to do is you have to do a lot of it. And if you're not doing a lot of it because you physically can't do it, you need to be thinking a lot about it. And you activate the same parts of your brain, whether you are physically doing it or whether you are imagining it in your brain. So we talk about preparation and planning. So the reason preparation and planning is so important is you go into a meeting and you think, this is how the meeting may go. All right. This is not how, and you don't. So you're never really sure. All right. You're going to you are the CEO of a company. You go into your business meeting, and you have a way that you want it to go. Now, the better planning you've done, and the more you've worked on it, the better influence you're going to have on that going the way you want it to go. All right. Because there's ways of influencing people. If you haven't done the work and it's just all ad hoc and you get in there and it doesn't go the way you want it to go, the chances are it's going to be harder to get that back on, in the direction you want it to go. So the preparation and planning really is about, all right, this is how I want it to go, but guess what? It could go this way. And if that person says that, I'm expecting that may be a challenge that's going to arise in that meeting. And this is how I'm going to deal with that challenge. And then as a result of that challenge, something else will pop up, and then that's how I'm going to deal with that challenge. So you're writing notes or you're just thinking about it or whatever. But you're activating the parts of your brain that you need to dive into like that in the heat of the battle, right in that moment when you need it, when you're under pressure. You just go to where you've prepared, So it's like the athlete, you drop to the level of your preparation. So you don't rise to these amazing levels. What you're trying to do is minimize how far you drop under pressure. So every day we've got a sort of a stock standard performance level that we're all at. We need to not drop too far below. That's so high performers are very good at staying in a narrow range of performance.
So that preparation piece is, and again, I'm linking the two between the sporting performance part and being a person in business or someone within that corporate world. And these points you've all mentioned, surely people aren't covering all of these because that consistency piece, the ability to seek knowledge, that sense of urgency, which my business partner's brilliant at, and he will jump on something and straight away, but could also be a challenge too when staying cool in the moment. Observing and listening. See that if you're an urgent person, being observant and listening, you would think would contradict each other a bit too. So finding that balance. Having a high level of drive and purpose. Loving the struggle and storytelling. Like, they're incredible attributes to have in your tool belt. Is there one that's more important than the other? How did you come up with that framework?
Well, I think let's get to that bit in a second.
Yeah.
I just want to go so you say, and this is the challenge for high performers is it's everything we do is art and science. It's art and science. So if you look at a great athlete to start with and use that as the framework, so great athletes go well in moments. They have moments where they're very, very good. And then they have periods where they're just okay, But because of the way they prepare physically and mentally, they are ready when that moment arises and they shine. And so business is the same. You have to be ready for the moment to be able to shine in that moment. When you're being judged, when the pressure is the most, that is, people ultimately judge you how you deal with high pressure situations because where you just naturally go to wherever you've prepared, whatever you've prepared for. And some people are born with it a little bit better than others, and other people have worked really, really hard at that. But it's knowing, like in life, it's knowing when to be one and when to be the other. It's knowing when to listen and when to go hard and make a really strong point. But this is the nuances. And that is why you need to learn a lot and gain a lot of knowledge, because then over time you will experiment, and you will experiment with all these different philosophies and all these different methods. And guess what? You're going to stuff it up a lot, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to get it wrong, and you're going to disappoint people. And I think one of the things that high performers are very good at is going, you know what? I didn't get that right. I didn't nail that. And being okay with that. And then actually acknowledging it, that they didn't get it right. So go back in the next meeting and go, guess what? Guys, we had a strategy. I went off track. I think I confused the situation. Let's get back on track now. This is where I feel like we need to go. That's the authenticity piece, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, if you're continually making mistakes and you can continuing to get it wrong, well, people are going to lose trust in you. But that you have to be comfortable in making mistakes, and I think that's one of the things that high performers do, is that they're prepared to risk. They've got the courage to risk. They understand that to do great things takes high levels of risk at the right time. And they know it's not going to be perfect.
If you're enjoying this episode and want to dive deeper into elite performance, head over to Andrew Russell's platform at www.russellperformance.co. Whether you're an athlete, business leader, or just someone chasing the best version of yourself, there's a wealth of tools and insights waiting for you.
The problem is the world tells you that they're perfect, or the world tells you that they're not, that they're imperfect, and then people sort of start to believe that they're one or the other. But the reality is we're all of that. All of us are all of that. The high performers just get it right more often than they get it wrong, but they have the ability to change, to mold. And so if you think about it at a brain level, so I talk about brain plasticity, we can change, mold our brains and activate different parts of our brain. And we now know that because, we do functional MRIs and we tell someone to think a certain way and one part of their brain fires up, and then we tell them to think another way and another part of their brain fires up. Like, it's fascinating the last 20 years what's happened in that psychology, neuroscience space, to now just say, look, these are real things.
How far has it come in particular in the AFL?
Well, I don't think it's come that far in the AFL. The knowledge around neuroscience has improved considerably, but I don't think it's actually transferred a lot into the AFL. But the great coaches have always been the great coaches, and you listen to all these, listen to these people that played under the great coaches, and the great coaches, through their life, their environment, through their knowledge seeking, they knew that this stuff worked. They just didn't know the why. And so there was an element that knew it worked and didn't know the why, other than this just works and people just come with me when I do these things. Now there's more people that know, but it doesn't necessarily mean there's a higher level of person or a higher level of leader out there. Just because you know, just doesn't mean you actually use it. The capacity is there for more people to be able to influence others and understand this. But as human beings, we're wired a certain way.
No.
And we're not wired for change. We don't actually love change. And as I said before about it, the subconscious dominates. A lot of people are just happy to do what they've always done and just keep repeating the same behaviour. And so if those behaviours are really positive behaviours, those people's lives work out pretty well. And if those behaviours are negative behaviours, then those people's lives don't end up so well. But most people aren't changing because it takes a lot of effort. And so the effort is, and why the effort works is because repetition of a certain thought pattern changes the part of your brain that's been activated. That different part of the brain then sends different signals, chemical signals, down through the body, and then the body responds however it responds. So, if you're highly stressed and you don't deal with it, well, that sends cortisol and stress hormones through your system, which then affects every single cell in your body. Tissue breakdown, cellular breakdown, and that's what leads to disease. If you have another, thought pattern, optimism is just so critical. Optimism versus pessimism.
Yeah.
That piece there is ultimately about, what that is telling you is how healthy your cells are. Because optimistic person fires up one part of the brain that sends growth hormone, testosterone, serotonin, all the things that make us feel good, make us think better, make us think clearer. They end up being better versions of themselves. So then the end result of this is longevity, and there's a heap of work being done in this longevity space, health span versus disease span. So two people both live to 80 years of age. One person, their last 10 years, they spend feeling good, healthy, so really long health span. Second person, the last 10 years, they live, but they live in a disease state. So life's hard for them and the quality of life is terrible. So all these principles that I'm talking to now are basically, we can talk about the now and being the high level performer and executing well today, and that's great. But where this stuff is really powerful is how it affects you in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, depending on when you start. There are no guarantees in life, so I can't guarantee anything. But what I do know, if you live by these principles, you're going to extend wherever it ends up for you. You will have a higher quality to that point in time and give your best chance to extend that as long as possible. And so, as a human being, how exciting is that to say that I control a large degree of this? The decisions I make every moment of every day will end up coming out in your energy, how other people see you, how other people view your energy, your clarity, vitality, and then it'll end up showing up in 5 years, 10 years, because we all want to live the longest lives. We're not here for a long time. We want to live long lives, but not just long lives. We want to live healthy lives. And so I think the challenge for people is they don't know. They sort of think, is the effort worth it for me? Because it is effort. Nothing is achieved without
So for the
great effort.
general punter, would be listening to this and going, this sounds awesome. Like I did, hearing you for a small minute on SEN that night, and then went through your program and can clearly say that the change is the pain for the change is worth the reward. What can people be doing to provide a catalyst to get this going? You talk about habits a lot as well. Does habits link into getting these elements working? What can people do to start making change?
Yeah, no, it's good. Is
it an all out? Do we do 10 things at once? Are we starting small?
Well, without doubt, we start small. Mm-hmm. So how did you start?
Through just having a coffee with you and going through that discovery piece, I think, so definitely small. I mean, it's been building with you over the weeks, definitely.
So what's the first thing you did, though? Go back to your introduction. What is the first thing you did?
Pick up the phone.
Picked up the phone.
Yeah. I remember
that.
I called you, and that's when I knew I was going to be in for a bit of a ride, because I said, hey Andrew, my name's Michael, found your number. I can't remember how I tracked you down, and it essentially said, I said, look, reach out to me. I'll be back from overseas around the 14th. You go, no, you can give me a call when you're back, if you want to do it. I was, shit, right, bro. This guy's serious about this. Is going to be a serious program. Just purely based off how that phone call went, and we kicked off on January 14th, and I remember it clear as day, because that simple phone call was a transformative one.
Well, the first thing you did was you made a decision. So you made the decision and that I'm going to call this guy.
Yeah.
I don't know who he is, I don't know anything about him, but I'm going to call this guy. So you made a decision.
I didn't even 100% know why. I just knew there was a calling there. And so then what you did is you made a commitment. Mm-hmm. So you made a commitment to that process because you made it public. All right. So one of the things about behaviour change is, well, what is the behaviour you want to change to start with? Start small. Start with one thing, but start small. But what is it that you want to change? And that may take a little bit to get to, so it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just like, I just want to have more energy. It doesn't need to be specific, but it's got to be, I want to have more energy to be able to play with the kids. You know, I want to be a better version of myself when I get home, so that between the hours of 6 and 9, I'm more present with the family. Yep.
Like what, I mean, it can be anything. Like that in itself could be the most significant thing you change in your life, is just the ability to be present. And
do what lights you up, is what you would say. Exactly.
So we did that piece around, what lights you up, what do you love doing, and keep that the centerpiece. So you need to, some people are very good at knowing what they want, and other people need others to help them. So reach out to someone, but start small. Make a commitment to what it is. Make it public. Definitely put it out there. So, when we talk about behaviour change, changing habits, is, one of the neuroscience principles is you make a contract. You sort of say, this is what I'm going to do. Goals and sub-goals are really important to that. It's just like, all right, in 6 months' time, I want to be here. But guess what? That's just, I can't think about 6 months' time. I just got to think about in a week. In a week's time, the only thing I'm going to change is I'm going to introduce one important meeting in the week where I'm going to set the direction for the team, because I feel like the team is lacking direction right now, or someone's told me they're lacking direction. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, is just, and it doesn't matter what happens in the week, that meeting is going in there, and where we just keep coming back to, what the direction is, going forward. So things in your day, there's this concept called limbic friction. Earlier in the day is much easier to build habits than later in the day, and that's because of the hormones that get released. So earlier, in the day, there's the hormones get released in your brain that allow us, we have more energy. And then it makes sense as the day goes on, which we follow these circadian rhythms as we go through the day, we get more mellow, different set of hormones get released, and as we move towards sleep, our minds slow us down chemically, and then our bodies slow down chemically. All right, so that's the nature of the day, is high alertness to low alertness. And then as the night, we build it back up again. We peak at the start of the day, Within an hour, we're at our best after we wake up, and then from there, it's a downward spiral. It's just how quickly does it go down, depending on how you live, how you eat, how you think.
How many coffees you consume.
Exactly. So that's the starting point, and then from there, there's a whole series of things you can do from there. How you reinforce your new behaviour. So there's a concept called the PREMAC principle where, you don't reward yourself until after you do whatever the new behaviour is. So it doesn't matter what it is, but you just say, all right, a reward might be, I'm going to catch up with a mate. I'm really keen on catching a mate. It was just like, you know what? I'm not catching up with a mate until I go for a run, or until I, introduce that new behaviour. I'm not going to eat that food that I like eating. So there's certain ways you can reinforce behaviour. So you got to think through, how am I going to reinforce, this behaviour? The greatest thing that anyone can do for themselves is understand what is their fundamental thought patterns moment to moment. Because that is the thing that shifts the needle. Self-talk is the thing that shifts the needle. So the biggest challenge that people have is what we call rumination. So this is good timing. Let's go back to the resilience and mental toughness piece, because I didn't actually answer that piece. What is it for you? So what do you know what I mean? Like how have you increased your resilience, your mental toughness? Is there anything that you've done?
Looking at your attributes here, two things that stand out is consistency and knowledge seeking. Hence why I'm doing this was one, to provide knowledge to our audience, but also my personal desires to learn more off people. I think when you hear stories from other people's hardships and times when they've been challenged, I remember I read a book called What It Takes. It was like the first sort of business book I read by Mark Boris. I would have been 20 years old. Or 22. I just started my business and went out, and he talks about the fear he would get feeling sick on a Sunday night, and I had that fear. I'd hate Sundays because I'm like, I've got to front up. I've got to speak to people. I've got bills I've got to pay. Like I'm in the small business world, right? But just hearing him do that helped me build resilience. So I think connecting with people and just turning up and being consistent, and the listening piece took me many years to just really observe and listen and play dumb until I was smart. Builds resilience. If that answers the question.
I love that piece around playing dumb until you're smart. There's so much stuff out there. There's so many people that think they're experts, in the world now.
Yeah.
Because there is a vast array of knowledge that comes across through social media. So we sort of think we know a lot now, but but not in a lot of depth.
Experience is different.
There's a lot of experts out there these days. And so great advice for young people is to just sit, absorb and listen. And even if you think you know it, just be happy and comfortable that you don't know it all and that there's more to learn. And then you're going to get your chance when people really want to hear from you. Take your chance. Take your chances. But take your chances with, when you've done the work. So I think the ability to be sort of humble and know what you know and know what you don't know in any situation is really important. So the resilience piece. So I'm going to try and simplify it. And I've worked really hard on trying to simplify this because it's a question that a lot of people ask. And so I grappled with this for a long time. And what I came to is this. Resilience, mental toughness is the ability to focus on the task at hand right now whilst you've got all these influences around you pulling you away from that task. So right now, my focus is here with you, absorbing this information, and I'm trying to be with you as much as I possibly can. All right. What could possibly be taking me away from that? So the resilience piece is, you don't know if I had 3 hours sleep last night or 12 hours sleep. But let's just say I had 3 hours sleep last night. Let's just say I had a fight with my wife this morning before I got here. Let's just say I've got a really stressful meeting this afternoon, all right, after this podcast that I have to prepare for, that I haven't prepared for, all right? Let's just say that there's some financial issues going on that I've got to deal with. And I could go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. So what I'm saying is there are a whole lot of things in life that are pulling us away from the moment, what we're doing right now. Resilient people have the ability to compartmentalize and push away all that stuff and have the ability to focus right here and now on what matters, and then the ability to come back to that and then deal with that at another time. As opposed to being here sort of with you, sort of not mind elsewhere, thinking of this. I can't affect that. I can't affect the fact that I lost, I had 3 hours sleep last night. I can't do anything about that right now. I can't do anything about the fact I had a fight with the wife. Deal with that later. I can't deal with the very fact of the money. I can't do that right now. All I can do is be here with you and execute as well as I possibly can. So the athlete, and this is what I learned from the athlete, is the athlete turns up to training with all this shit going on in their life. No one cares. No one cares. You're a professional athlete and your job is to get the job done. So at training, it's to get the job done the best you can. Doesn't need to be amazing. Just needs to be pretty good. Your best version today. On game day, you rock up in front of 80,000 people. And I used to stretch Sam Mitchell before every game. All right, the calmest character you've ever come across before a game of AFL footy. Did he play calm? Did he play calm? Was he calm?
Absolutely not.
What's that?
No. He was, no. Well, I mean, he was ferocious.
He was ferocious in the contest.
He probably was level-headed.
But ball in hand.
Super calm.
Super calm.
Yeah.
All right. And so we would have this laugh, and I can't actually remember whether it came from me or it came from him, but he said, we always say, you know what, that bloke up the back row at the MCG, all right, that's paid $70 to come to the game, couldn't give a shit what happened to me last night, could not care less that the kids are screaming on the way to the game or that I've got a tight left hamstring. All they're doing is judging me on what I am today and what I produce right now. That's what they judge me on. And he's like, and I just love that. I just get off on that, knowing that. And so the reason we got to that point was it doesn't matter how you feel before a game of AFL footy. No one cares. You got a job to do, and he's prepared well for that. So he goes, I have the confidence that my best games are the games where I feel my worst. All right, where I feel my worst, and so that builds resilience, and that builds confidence, in himself. A huge self-belief that he built up through his preparation. The way he thinks, the imagery he does before a game, the fact he understands the environment,
Just touch on that imagery piece. Articulate that.
Yeah, so the imagery.
So you're Sam Mitchell, you're about to go into the MCG. What's imagery?
Yeah, so the imagery pieces, and I think a lot of athletes do it, but any high performer does it, and even talk about in business. Yep. There's a real role for imagery in business. And so the imagery piece is, I talked a little bit about before, the same parts of your brain are being activated whether you're actually doing it or whether you're thinking about doing it, all right? Your brain doesn't know the difference between thinking and doing, which is fascinating, isn't it? It's pretty cool. So he would prepare during the week. He'd spend time preparing during the week. It might have been during training, might have been after training, might have been at night before he went to bed, preparing for the game and thinking, all right, what are the challenges that I'm going to be faced in the game today? So this is what I'm going to do really well. So imagery around contest, tackle, positioning at a stoppage, what he's going to do. The imagery around he gets whacked, he gets smashed, he's on the floor, he's hurting. How's he going to respond to that? All right, so it's not just about doing imagery about what's going to be beautiful and how great I'm going to be and how amazing it is. And the good performers, high performers actually prepare for the shit fight that is. And we all walk into shit fights in our life. And so the more work you do, the more comfortable you become and the more emotional control you have in those situations when the shit fight arises. So, a game of AFL footy is easy because it's going to be tough and hard. You're going to get belted, rah, rah, rah. And he's like, And he was just so comfortable in that space. I know I'm going to hit someone, and I know I'm going to get hit. I know I'm going to lace someone out, and I know that I'm going to miss. And there's one thing about the really good performers over time is when they make mistakes, they rationalize that mistake and they say, in a footy sense, I want that ball in my hand right now because I'm going to make up for that mistake. Because there's no way it's going to happen 2 times in a row. And then they stuff it up again. They think, wow, that's an abnormality. Give me the ball. I want the ball in my hand again to show everyone what I'm really made of. The same thing in business. Something doesn't go well. You don't deal with a situation with a staff member very well. It's just, well, that's abnormal. I didn't deal with that very well. Go and deal with the staff member. Acknowledge you didn't deal with it very well. And then look forward to the next time that you can show that staff member or another staff member how well you can do it. So you're constantly moving on to the next opportunity.
But you're resolving the issue as well.
Resolving the issue, and then
loving the struggle is that attribute that you mentioned.
Well, but well, certainly some love it, but learning to be comfortable with it and understanding that it's just part of it. That if you want to do great things, that you have to be able to deal with it, and most of the time deal with it reasonably efficiently and reasonably quickly. So if we use the same analogy and we talk about dealing with stress, all right, because stress is something I think is a really important piece to go through. Are you happy to go there?
Yeah, let's go there. Yeah.
So first of all, stress is something that we create in our minds. So what is stressful for you is not stressful for me, and what is stressful for me, not for you. All right. So it's a construct. We create it, and then we deal with it, or it gets out of control really quickly in our minds. All right. And so the science behind that is very simple. We get into a stressful situation. How do we deal with that? So you deal with it as a challenge or a threat. Very simple. So we both walk into the same situation. You say, it's not ideal, but this is a challenging one. Let's work through it. I deal with it and say, geez, I'm gone here. I'm in all sorts of trouble. I don't know how to deal with it. I'm way out of my league. I deal with it as a threatening situation. So if you go back to evolution, if we deal with things as a challenge, it lights up the part of our brain to do with creativity, to do with knowledge seeking, to do with the frontal part of our brain. If we deal with something as a threat, then all the blood flow goes to the back of our brain. So it is exactly the same thing that happens if we run across the road and a car comes in front of us and it's about to plow through us. The part of our brain that fires up is the back part of our brain. So there's a threat, and I need to get out of there as quick as I can, and I go into fight or flight mode. Fight or flight mode is do whatever the hell you have to do to make that threat go away. We are nowhere near our best when we're at fight or flight mode. We are literally just trying to survive a situation. So the getting out of the way of the car is physical survival. The dealing with a threat in a business sense is you are just in survival mode, highly emotional when you're in survival mode. Less emotional control, don't deal with that situation as well. All right. And the other thing about it is we lose our creativity. When we're highly stressed or when we're in a stressful environment, we lose our creativity because, again, all the blood flow is going to the back part of our brain, which is all about fight or flight and survival. So, this is where you start to think everything relates to the brain. Everything relates to, and some of it's conscious and some of it's that bit is unconscious, but you can train it. You can train it if you want to train it. So, it's pretty fast. So underlying when we want to deal with stress is a level of stress is really good for us and we need it. So stress is not bad. Stress is what we need to thrive, and it's what causes us to really sort of dig in and fine tune what we're doing and go hard, what we need to go hard. So stress is good. High levels of stress are bad, and certainly low level stress over a long period of time is bad.
If you're enjoying this episode and want to dive deeper into elite performance, head over to Andrew Russell's platform at www.russellperformance.co. Whether you're an athlete, business leader, or just someone chasing the best version of yourself, there's a wealth of tools and insights waiting for you. Explain
for
how.
ourselves. So,
because you would think having a low level of stress over a long period of time would be better.
Sorry, probably not low level. Sorry, probably moderate levels of stress over a long period of time is bad. So low level stress, is a good thing. Moderate to high levels, and certainly moderate levels, is not a good thing because, again, what happens is you have these inflammatory chemicals being released through your body, and then that affects every single cell. So that breaks your cells down. All right, if we break our cells down, that leads to disease in its most simplest form. So stress, high levels of stress, short periods, moderate levels of stress over time equals health deterioration. It leads to breaking down neurons in our brain. So we lose how smart we are, we lose our creativity, and it can lead to things like dementia and other things. So that's how powerful stress is to our brains. It is really, really, really powerful. And it's the one thing, if you can learn to deal with stress, then you're going to have a healthier life. You just will, at a cellular level. You cannot get away with it. It's not like you can deal with it. You're better than someone else. High levels of stress are high levels of stress. What some people can do, though, is they can deal with high levels of stress particularly well, compartmentalize. And one of the things the science talks about is dealing with stress is whatever is stressing you, identifying it, and then dealing with it as soon as possible as that stress arises. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to resolve it. But the attempt to resolve it changes what happens at a brain chemistry level. So the very fact that you just face it head on, come up with a strategy, work out how you want to deal with it, and then your mind says, well, I've worked really hard on that piece. I've done a pretty good job. It's still there, but I've made an attempt to work on it, means that you calm your brain down to some degree. Now, if the stress is still there, it's still there, and you're never going to minimize it or you're never going to get rid of it altogether. But again, a lot of these things it's like a slow drip of poison. You've got to just minimize the number of drips over time. So anything you can do to work on it is a good thing for your health and inflammation.
That's where I've learnt a lot of you is using that most active part of your day, which is the first, dealing with the challenges or anything that could potentially lead to future stress or compress my creativity, is deal with that in the morning, get it done, get it off the list, and then whilst I'm, still got a bit of good hours left in me, get to some creative work. But you can't be a creative if you're stressed, and I totally agree with that. So yeah, I think that's a really important piece to it.
And I think, and so if things are stressful late in the day, one of the really simple strategies late in the day is a journal. As a journal dump. Going to bed, because the stress can affect your sleep quality, which we then sleep is critical to our health. Just getting it out, the physical act of writing something down. I need to deal with this tomorrow. I need to deal with that person in the office. I need to ring that person about my finance. I need to whatever it is. I need to talk to that coach or whatever. That can calm things in the short term and play a role. Simple strategies.
And another area, which obviously you are an expert in, which we haven't discussed much of, is the exercise and the actual physical training ways that you can deal with stress. You introduced me to a different type of running I'd never done in my entire life, which is not just threshold or speed work or Swedish fartlek. What does that do, that type of running, to your cells? Do you want to explain a bit more? I learnt so much off that this year. And how can that help you?
I think a lot of people, just if you want to be a runner or a swimmer or whatever, they think just go for a run, and yeah, there's real benefit in that, no doubt. So just running is great, running at any level. But what as humans, what we're trying to do in terms of our cellular health is increase the number of mitochondria, right, in our cells. All right. Now
That's the word I couldn't get out.
Now the best athletes in the world are trying to do this because they need to improve, aerobic efficiency to be better athletes, you need to build as much mitochondria as you can, and then you need to build the aerobic enzymes within the mitochondria, and then so there's a whole series of chemical reactions that take place. But essentially what you want to be doing is you want to be training in a whole lot of different heart rates. So, people are talking about zone 2 training, and zone 2 training is 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. It's not particularly hard. It's actually easy. You can talk to someone next to you, and that's where you're building a lot of this mitochondria. All right, and so that is a cellular adaptation that helps every single human being being a healthier person and reducing your chance of being in a disease state. All right, because that's the powerhouse of every single cell. So if you have more of them, you have more powerhouses. That means you can deal with life stress a lot better if you have more mitochondria. From an athletic point of view, there's a performance element to it, because then you got the ability to use more oxygen before you go into a state of acidosis, and that's what stops people running fast is acid building up. And people talk about lactic acid is the simplest form of that. And so the type of training that I introduced you to was doing the lower level zone 2 stuff to build the mitochondria. All right, so your lactate levels might be 1.5 to 3 millimole, for instance, so they're very low to that point in time. But then we've also built in this interval training, VO2 max training, tempo training, where you will be training at a lactate level of between probably 4 and 12. And then there's a whole lot of other cellular adaptations going on there. So your ability to use oxygen, your ability to buffer lactic acid, oxidize lactic acid, clear lactic acid. You need to train all those energy systems to be able to run as fast as you possibly can for as long as you possibly can. So, and the type of training you do is just designed for the event. So you need to think about what the event is, and then you design the training. 800-meter runner needs to do more work with higher levels of lactic acid because the event is an event that produces lots of lactic acid. The marathon is an event that doesn't produce much at all, but you want to improve your aerobic efficiency. So that's why you do more the lower end and medium intensity training, and we do a small dose like we did the other day. Like for you, we did a speed session. What did we do? 14 500s.
Yep. Off
45 seconds recovery. Now that's a speed session for a marathon runner. That's an endurance session for someone else.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're just tapping into different levels of physiology, which all have a different output.
And it just changes your entire day. How I struggle to see how people in business or CEOs leading companies there seems to be 2 types of, or maybe 3 types of people. How people deal with stress isn't the word, it's just the chaos, right? So some people drink or do things to reduce that stress. Some people are doing excessive exercise, and some people have a healthy balance between both. I struggled with balance. I like to, I'm all in on one thing, and the running's been brilliant. And it really does create a whole lot of all those attributes that we spoke about being consistent and, that self-reflection piece and building up that creativity. How important do you think for people in business or people leading other people it is to stay in shape? And if people can't run, right, because a lot of people can't, they've got bad knees in their 40s and their 50s or whatnot, what other things can they do to chase that high?
Yeah, great questions. Firstly, the 3 things that really matter in terms of energy and longevity are exercise, sleep, and nutrition. All right, so they're the 3 absolute keys. The exercise piece is the science is so dramatic now, as in how it helps humans and human functioning at a cellular level, that it's just too hard to ignore. And I always came from this back, you're an athlete, and so you've got this bias towards training and exercise, and but I always knew it was deeper than that, because we know at a hormonal level what changes. We know that it reduces inflammatory hormones, and we know that it increases serotonin, it increases dopamine, We now know that the relationship between food and exercise is so powerful in terms of mental health. Mm-hmm. Like the first thing, you should be doing if you are struggling from a mental health point of view is, well, the three things are working on your sleep patterns, looking at really nutrient-dense foods and avoiding alcohol, avoiding high sugar diets and diets, that have inflammation, and then exercising. And so some of the research around exercise is extraordinary. So we talked a bit before around mitochondria and how powerful that is at a cellular level in terms of health. So there was a study that showed 3 months of sort of high-intensity interval training for 40-year-olds increased mitochondria by 40%. There was a study that showed mitochondria increases for 60-year-olds with 3 months of 3 sessions a week of 45 minutes increased it by 60%. Like,
it's incredible.
It is incredible. And so the three things with exercise that are really important is low level aerobic work, and that can be anything. Walking up and down hills can be as powerful because you're going to get your heart rate up, and then you're going to come down, and it's going to go down, and you're going to get your heart rate up. Anyone who walks a hill is going to get their heart rate up into 70%, of maximum heart rate zone. You just have to. You will. So you don't have to run. It doesn't matter what you do. It's just doing something. So, they show that 3 sessions a week of 45 minutes makes a significant difference. So there's 3 elements to exercise. One is low intensity exercise with doses of little short bursts of 30 seconds. If you're just say you're on a bike, you could do short doses, 5 minutes of 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off once a week, to get your heart rate up, to 70 to 80%, depending on your age. And obviously as we get older, we don't want to get our heart rate as high. But there still is benefit for getting your heart rate up in short doses. Mm-hmm. The second element is strength training. And we now know the relationship between body strength and your health is really significant. And even the people falling in their elder, when they get old, such a strong relationship between falling and then premature death. All right, after you fall, have a big fall as you get older, because people just decondition completely, and their systems just stop working. It is crazy how the relationship between that. And then the third one is like stability and balance type training, standing on one leg, just being on a boat, like where you're unstable, walking on sand, being unstable, so that switches on parts of your brain, all right, different parts of your brain that control balance and proprioception, which deconditions. And there's one thing there's a lot of stuff there's a lot of stuff I do know, there's a lot of stuff I don't know. But the one thing I do know for certain is whatever you don't do, you lose. All right? So if you don't use it, you lose it in life. So if you don't train aerobically, well, you're going to lose that ability completely. If you don't train strength training, you are going to lose muscle, you're going to lose strength. All right? You have a 40% greater chance of falling over, all right, and breaking your hip if you don't exercise, if you don't do strength training versus doing strength training. Strength training, it is the one thing that people getting older should do, because it has such a significant effect on bone health, and hormonal health, that even if you don't love doing the other stuff and doing the aerobic work, strength training once a week is better than nothing. Twice a week is good.
Your strength training's very different to what I was doing as well. I mean, it's not the conventional sort of weightlifting. We've gone to the gym a couple of times, and it is a lot more, as you said, around balancing and all different types of exercises that probably didn't involve too much gym equipment itself, really, was it?
Yeah, there is so much you can do just by using body weight.
Yeah, you could, from the comfort of your home, really, there's a lot you could be doing.
Yeah, there's heaps. And that's where I think you really can combine like a single leg arabesque movement, a single leg balance movement where, you just hold a plate in your hand and so you're challenging every system in the body when you're doing those exercises versus getting in and doing a straight squat. And there's a role to lift heavy, but you don't need to lift heavy is the answer. It's not about doing that. You can get huge benefits by not lifting heavy. But it's like anything, you just need to do it, and you need to do it consistently, and then you develop a routine. And when we're developing a habit or a routine, so it's just like, all right, how long do you think it takes to develop a habit, a new habit or routine? How long do you think it would take?
I think I've heard the stats, but is it 21 days, 30 days?
Pretty good. It can take 21 to 30 days.
And that's a long time when you're doing something you're not comfortable with, really. That's probably why people don't get to that elite status.
It can take longer than that, though.
Yeah.
And for some people, it can be shorter than that. So, but what normally happens, this is the routine, is that you start doing something, you're 2 weeks in, you're 14 days in, and it feels difficult, it feels hard, it feels abnormal, and you don't actually necessarily feel better. So a lot of people start exercising and they feel worse. And just at the point in which they're going to break through and they're going to start to feel good, they give up. It's just like, you know what? It's like anything in life. It's just like, well, everyone's looking for the quick affirmation that this works. And a lot of things in life, it's not going to hit you in the face straight away that it's a benefit to you, that it works. You need to give it time. And we're a society of instant gratification. So we're looking for something to do now to make me feel better instantly and then move on to the next thing. So we're constantly chasing. And that chasing instant gratification is where we get our dopamine hits from. So we're constantly trying to get a dopamine hit. And the reason we're trying to get dopamine hits is that is what drives motivation and drive. So you want to increase drive and motivation, and we only have so much dopamine. So if we have a big moment in our life, so we have something amazing happen, we're on a high, what happens after that high?
Big low.
Big low. And that's because we only have so much dopamine. There's a dopamine pool. And it's like if you have used that whole pool up and you dragged all of it out for that big emotional high, there's a cost to that. And the cost is like, we'll stuff you. You're not going to get a hit of this for a while now. You've used it. So now you've got to build it back up again. But so we're constant, and so then we think, then we keep chasing the next high, the next high, the next high, the next high. We want dopamine to be released, but we want sort of moderate levels released consistently. Mm-hmm. We don't go so well when we have the big hit. And big hits come in our life of dopamine. We're emotional. We have big emotional events. But we still don't understand that what comes with that is we need to then come out of that and be comfortable with the low that follows it. But most people just get into a cycle. It's why people go to drugs. It's why they undertake behaviours that are high risk taking behaviours. High risk taking behaviours are instant gratification. People are essentially saying, I need a dopamine hit. They're not thinking that, but that's what they're craving. They're craving the chemical high as a result of undertaking that risk. It's what we do as humans.
I'd love your opinion, because it's here. And we're part of creating it right now, which is social media. You've got 2 boys. What advice would you give to the younger generation? It is hard seeing so many people with their heads down on the way to work, just on their phones, living through their screens. It is. We all know how bad it is for you, I think, to some degree, long term. What are your thoughts on it? When I say social media, just being on your phone. Yeah. Before bed, after bed, all of that. What impact is it having on people? That you know of?
Well, we know it is having impact. And we know there's some positive elements of that. But I think we know that there's more negative elements than positive. And time is going to tell, because how life is so different. Talking to our kids now about how different life is, they look at you and they laugh. They think, you had one TV in the house. You had the one phone on the wall. Where the whole family had to live it. So, wow, it's changed, hasn't it? And in a very short space of time, it has changed. So I, in my neuroscience, I actually did a whole piece on exactly this social media piece. I've just done a big a big project on this piece. And really what it comes down to is, it comes down to behaviour change. And I think that it's about habits. And I think really, in essence, we need to be working on our social media habits with our kids and ourselves, and having periods of the day where we connect with each other, where there's no phones, there's no social media. It's just like, all right, well, this is dinner time, and for half an hour before and half an hour afterwards, we're connecting, as a family, and we're going to talk about our days, and we're going to talk about our challenges, and we're going to enjoy each other's time, and we're going to live, because that's what we are. We're socially connected, and the social connection we get through our phone is very different to the social connection we get through each other. Mm-hmm. And the social connection we get through each other is the mirror neurons, the heart-to-heart connection. It's physiological. We're getting a physiological connection. We're getting a deeper connection when we're with other people. We're not getting that, through social media, are we? We're just getting short hits. And essentially, I talked about dopamine before. We're getting these short hits of dopamine, all the time, and it's the world is fabricated. The world is not, the world is not as it seems. So it is conditioning our brains in a different way. So we look at a screen, we look at that, whatever we're looking at, that is a direct influence on what's happening in our brain. So those parts of our brain are being activated. So if we're looking at things on social media that are motivational, well, that's going to have a positive effect. If we're looking at things on social media that are less desirable, well, that's the effect it's going to be having on your brain. It is just a direct link to your brain, whatever you're looking at. And the greater emotion you have looking at that is the greater effect it's going to have on your brain. It's still going in, and it's going in, and again, because we're watching it so on, it's just rolling. There's an element of thought, so that's going to our brain, but there's also an element that's going to our subconscious, because if we do it so often, that whatever we're viewing will just go into our subconscious. So that's how we believe the world is. Our brain will start to believe that is the way the world is. And so that just depends on what you're watching.
Scary times. Don't watch the Carlton YouTube channel right now. If you're,
just go back to 2023, second half of 2023.
Yeah, I'll go back to the old
just keep watching
YouTube shows if they still exist. This has been awesome. Last question. What are your non-negotiables? 3 things for someone that wants to really focus on their longevity. What would you say? Well, the three things in terms of longevity I've mentioned are sleep, nutrition, and exercise. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're the 3 fundamentals. If you get them right, then you give yourself every chance. And that's the beauty of it, isn't it? Isn't saying, well, when you talk about being the best version of ourselves, and our versions are all different, and we're all going to have our challenges, and I can't guarantee anything, but I absolutely know for certain that you will be a better version of yourself for longer and live at a higher level and be able to influence others if you nail those 3 things or work on those 3 things. Because what flows on from that is the stuff that we've talked about today, is how you think, how you breathe, what's going on, moment to moment, how you deal with emotions, yourselves, others' emotions, how you deal with stress. All that becomes easier. So if those fundamentals are there, then all the other stuff is going to be at a lower level without you having to try. And then if you add that stuff, and then with an awareness of those other things we've spoken about today, then that accumulative effect, then you just go to another level in terms of how you're living your life. So it's like, well, how effective do you want to be really is up to you in terms of how many different levels, how many areas you want to dive into. But if you dive into those 3 areas, everything else becomes easier, and you deal with what comes at you in life at a higher level, which is pretty bloody exciting, isn't it? And I think where the world is at is, I know this stuff. I'm really excited about this stuff,
but I don't know where to start. I don't know who to trust. I don't know where to go. I don't know who to listen to, because it takes effort. And anything that takes effort, people want to know that there's an outcome. So why would I spend 3 weeks trying to train to happy if I'm not really sure it's the best way to go about it? And this is, again, we talked about social media, the danger of social media, because everyone's an expert and everyone thinks they know how to do it. And everyone says it's easy. And everyone gives the impression, oh yeah, I do this now and how cool am I and how easy did that? It's just like, you know what? It was bloody hard work for that short period of time. But now I'm operating at a higher level, and guess what? Everything feels easier. Everything feels easier. I have moments that are tough, but overall I'm operating at a higher level. And so I think that's what the world's waiting for is strategies to bring it to life, And there are some, there's general strategies, and then there's bringing it to life for you, because all our lives are just so different. There's nothing the same in your life to my life, except we both love running. That's about it. And then everything else is nuances that make us different. And your wife is different to you, and your kids are different to you, and everyone's got their own rhythm of which they live life. So understanding their rhythm and getting them to understand their rhythm, is pretty cool.
So I guess if anyone wants to understand their rhythm, reach out to Andrew and maybe inquire about Unleash Humans, because that's a pretty good place to start. I think for me, like I mentioned, it was a lot of the things you've mentioned I had no idea about, in particular the science behind it, but that framework and that structure that tone that's been set for 8 weeks builds those habits. But mate, thanks for coming on today. There's so much incredible knowledge within that, and thanks for joining us on The Margin.
Mate, awesome. Thanks for inviting me in. I love talking about this stuff, as you know, and ultimately, just I think one of the great things in life, if you can help other people, be better versions of themselves, then there's nothing. That's certainly my purpose in life now, is to help others thrive, and do great things, whatever that is for them.
That's awesome, mate. Appreciate you coming in.
Thanks, Mick. See you, mate.